Turn on the Christmas tree.
Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Nathan with Citizen Nerd again, and today I'm going to introduce you to a keyboard that I, as a child, was totally drooling over. Never could get. When it came out, I remember when it came out actually, and it was one of those that was like, wow, that's the keyboard to have. But my family just, the same as $2,000 back in 1983 or 85, whatever it was, and or 83, yeah, and it was just too much. It was just too much money. So my first synthesizer, which I'll insert a picture of here right now, was the Seal DK70, which we picked up at a local music store. And they actually had a DX7 there as well. But yeah, it was well over $1,000 difference. I think it was actually closer to about $1,200 or $1,300 difference, which that's a lot of money. So, but I finally did get a hold of one, and it was kind of funny. I usually buy these keyboards to do repair jobs too. I intentionally buy them not working, just so I can kind of play around with them, and then try and make them work and such like that. And this one, the only thing wrong with it, other than needing a little bit of a cleaning, was it needed a new battery. And you know, it's a battery. And of course, it had someone had tried to fix it with a new battery, but they really didn't know how to solder at all, and it was horribly scary actually. So I cut the old battery out. That's what I had to do to get to it, and then cleaned up the solder connections that they had messed up there. And I went ahead and actually pulled a battery connector off an old motherboard that was scrapped out, and that just takes a CR2032 battery and soldered that in place. And I I didn't expect this to be that complicated, or that lack of complicated to fix, honestly. And put a new battery in the thing, and of course it comes up, and if you hit internal memory, it was just gibberish because it had lost what it was. And I had then through some joys of trying to find a good cable to load, managed to load everything. And if you want to know how to load everything through MIDI without having a cartridge, because I don't own the cartridges, wish I did, but I don't, and they're like $100 a piece. I honestly paid $157 for this thing delivered. So $100 cartridge is a little salty for the initial cartridge. Plus, you don't need it. You can actually do it with software online. And honestly, if I remember to, I'll put a link to this. But if you look up Woody Piano Shack, he has a great video on just it's like a 2-minute video, reloading the software right onto this, and it's that quick and it's done. I really like his videos for that. They're kind of nice. So why did I buy this? Well, the price was, of course, one thing. It was $157. It's hard not to beat. You know, I've paid a lot more for keyboards before. This was the dream keyboard I wanted as a kid, rather. I couldn't afford it, and it's just one of those that it just makes such a beautiful sound. The sounds in this, well, let me go to like Piano 1, for example. This is supposed to be a piano, so this is just a C chord. Let me put my headphones on just so I can hear. So this is a C chord. Yeah. I don't know of a piano that makes that sound. Now, up in this range, kind of sounds a bit like an E piano. This is not supposed to be the E piano sound. This is supposed to be just the piano. So that's Piano 1. Piano 2, which is patch 9. No, that's not a piano. Now, patch 10 is Piano 3. You know. It honestly sounds more like an EDM thing. You know. For some effects, it's pretty fun. But it also does not sound like a piano. I mean, not even close. But as several of the videos have described throughout the internet and throughout YouTube and such like that, which is on the internet, of course, but is that it didn't have great sounds. But the other issue is this thing is so complicated to program because you have to think almost in reverse and then circular to come up with good programs for this thing. So no one ever really programmed the thing much. I mean, you could, and people did, but comparably, most didn't. But when you get to a sound that's the E-piano sound, this is so 80s, used on so many things. And it's such a beautiful piano sound. The only thing is, by itself, it could really use some chorus. So I'll go to my XR18 software here. And we will turn on chorus. So this is chorus added. Isn't that such a beautiful sound? Honestly, this thing, so many other synthesizers I have that are the newer style, that, for example, the ones that are all PCM, or I've got an FA8, so it's engine driven. It's got some great sounds. But the ones that try and emulate, the ones that try and actually emulate the DX7, they don't, they're close, but not so much. I mean, it just, it's such just a beautiful sound in itself. Even, you're talking, this keyboard here is an 8300 serial number, so it was made in 83, at least that's all the information I can find on this thing. It still has the original ROM in it, and it is not backlit. That's the funny thing. I'll show you a picture of this thing here in a minute. But when you're looking at it, there's a lot of things that it could really use upgraded. So I actually got upgrades on the way. They're not here yet. So I'll go through a video on, because I'm going to replace the LED or the LCD with a backlit LED version, and I'm going to replace the BIOS with the extended BIOS version, which adds and fixes a couple of things like the MIDI velocity send issue and a few other things. I decided not to do like gray matter or the few of the other ones that add a whole bunch more sounds, because I can load them from the computer to the keyboard like that. These ROMs are tiny, right? So a normal ROM cartridge, for example, is 2 banks of 4K. So 8K is the entire module. So you're just sending 4K at a time, the 32 patches, through effectively a serial methodology. But it is so quick. You don't really need that as long as you have a decent keyboard or a decent computer with a decent MIDI cable. And here's the thing on MIDI cables, I bought one of the cheap ones and tried to do it, and this thing just told me I was like, it was ignoring me. I was like, oh gosh, something's really wrong with the brand of this thing. Turns out, no, the cheap ones really just are that cheap, and they don't work. Then I bought a Roland MIDI to USB adapter like that, just loaded right up. So yeah, you get what you pay for. But so a couple of famous sounds, my favorites anyway. The E-piano sound, which you've heard. Let me mute that. And the little slap bass. Which I know I'm not in the right key for that, but the Kenny Loggins Danger Zone. And then off the same movie soundtrack, you have another famous one. Anyway, but I love those 2 bass sounds. I think they're phenomenal. Now, one of my favorite songs or sounds here, the marimba is also pretty decent. But again, it needs reverb and a few other things. That was marimba. Let's find Tubular Bells. This one was one. There we go. This one was one I think it still sounds as good today as it did then. All the other sounds do as well. Of course, they don't really degrade over time. It's the digital synthesizer. Even though it uses FM synthesis methodology, which is a little different, but it's still just, you know. If I can get this right, we'll try this here. This is, you know, that's, you know, and that's, it's just, that's phenomenal still. I love that. Another one I really don't like is the steel drums. Timpani, you know. Yeah, it's okay, I guess. This is one I never could figure out why they would do it. Why would you put that? Anyway. So, now voice. This is their concept of a voice pad. So, and all I've done, I do use a foot pedal for this, and then I've got, I think, I still have the effects going in it for just the stereo chorus. Keep in mind, this keyboard is a mono keyboard, not a monophonic keyboard. It will definitely do multiple sounds, but it is a mono out. So the neatest things you can do is that you can use the effects to give you the stereo sound on this thing pretty well. You take the output of this. I'm running like an XR18, but if you wanted to stay like more old school or such like that, you could get like a the Yamaha SPX90, which is a mono in stereo out, and it would work beautifully with this. And that came out while this was out, so I really do think they were conceptualizing the idea of this being used with that. But anyway, so take off. This is a weird. I'd love to find a good use for this. There in a sec. And I have no idea of a good use for that, but it is actually kind of fun. There's some other ones on here. The synth lead. It's okay. I honestly think there's some better sounds that could be used for leads, but hey, you know, it is what it is. The brass sounds, you know, that's pretty good. So, but the Brass 3 has more of a proper attack for some of the things. I think they did pretty good. I actually like that one. That's not too bad. But if you're doing if you're wanting a synthy sound, you know. The Brass 2, actually, that would stand up today to some really decent things. Strings, you know, that's not terribly bad. Yeah, it's you know, it has its added reverb, chorus, and a little bit of delay to that, so it sounds a bit more like this. So I can hear it. So. Yeah, you know, that's not bad. It actually is pretty decent. Now, the one thing, a few of the things you got to remember. One, programming this thing is incredibly difficult. Like I said initially, that you kind of have to think backwards. You have to think what you need to what your end goal is, and then you had to think the other direction. Because the way it worked is radically different from the way that you're used to most of this stuff functioning. If you're thinking in the analog world where you set your two oscillators, you know, and then you go and you start working on the envelopes and stuff like this. I mean, the envelopes are the same idea. It does actually have the standard envelope concept. But you have to remember, this thing is more like a mathematical keyboard. For example, there's a good video out there that actually shows a guy explaining how the waveform works by using a graphing calculator, where you literally set up your main oscillator and then you start adding in your modifiers. So you actually have two things. You have operators and you have modifiers. So, if you want to think of it this way, you have an oscillator and then you have your oscillator that affects the main oscillator. So you have like a sine wave, and then you have a couple other things that can go in here and modify this. And that's what all these algorithms up here and then hieroglyphics things are kind of describing. So the way you're looking at this, I'm on strings 1 here where we left off. So the way you've got it is you have 6 operators, which are main oscillators. And this is the way that the algorithms actually program in, and you have to do that through the data entry or the up-down buttons, which are off to the side. I'll show those here. Sorry. Okay. Sorry for the tilting. There we go. So you got your volume control, which is just, you know, volume control. And you have your data entry. And the data entry affects, it will display what it's doing here, but your data entry, slider, and the up-down buttons work in a similar fashion. And then off to the side you have your modulation pitch wheel. But anyway, so I like what I think it was Mike Acosta, maybe at ADSR, was describing this as like hieroglyphics. It's more of a programming language. You might think of this as the way the whole thing has to assemble itself together. So by figuring out what you want to do here, and of course there's books online and some other videos that explain this pretty well. But you go in here, and like I had to adjust the master tune, for example, which doesn't affect this. But the master tune, this was off compared to other keyboards. So you go in there, and you select your function, and then you would hit 1, and it would say that. And okay, so we'll go, let's see, yeah. So we'll hit function, and we're going to go to master tune, and then about center is where it usually sits. But anyway, so that you have to adjust it for that. And when you're done, you go over here. Let's show that again. So your master tune, when you're there, you select function and 1, and it says master tune adjust. And for example, so once you set that, you're good, and you can just leave it. I always make sure I get off of this because I've noticed that even though you're outside of the programming, and by going back to internal memory and it displays, but it still is adjusting that. So what I always do is I go to function, and then I hit usually just 14, which if you notice just brings up battery voltage, and that has no effect. So now it does nothing. So now if I go back to internal, and I'm back on the strings patch again, for example. Okay, so programming this thing, needless to say, is a little more on the difficult side, and I have not even tried to mess with that as much as I should yet, but I just got this thing, and I've been really trying to play around with the original patch sounds. Like, again, one of my favorites is E-piano, and if I can get through the keyboard here. It's just such a beautiful thing. I was going to use it on one of the songs by All Sons and Daughters. So I may actually take this to church because I play in my church's band, and I may, when next time we get ready to do that song, I may break out the old DX7 and do it on the DX7, much to the chagrin of the guy who runs the band. But a few other things of note. One, this keyboard itself is in really good condition. Someone put a couple Braille stickers over this, but honestly, they're not bothering me, so I'll probably just leave them. There's one little slit here below the 7 button. And I think that was the only damage I saw. This. Well, there's a corner back here that got cracked. One of the back corners. They're notorious. They're just plastic, and you can get replacements. You can certainly 3D print them. There's a guy making some wood ones out there, and I'm thinking about just doing that and really kind of doing this up nice. This is of course, I said a lot before, it has not been upgraded, or has not rather been upgraded to the newest BIOS version. That should arrive hopefully tomorrow or Saturday, maybe Monday or Tuesday, whatever the delivery date is on those things. And then I'm also going to backlight this, because this is basically the way this thing came in 1983. It had no backlight. It did have a number to tell you where you were on which patch, but it had no backlight to tell you what that patch was. Where in here, if you can see it, it says E-Piano. Right, number 11 E-Piano. So, but if you're on stage, that's dark. There's no light to that. So now there's a backlight that you can get for this. It really, I think it replaces the entire little board here, but that's easy. And there's another replacement, which I might just do on my own anyway, because this is just 7-segment LEDs here. Standard ones you can buy anywhere. I'm thinking about replacing those and putting in like maybe blue ones or something like that. I don't know yet. Just kind of thinking. But nothing else really on this thing is wrong. Every button works. Every key works. The velocities work. Aftertouch works. Let me go in there and turn Aftertouch on, which is over here. It is 30. It's on. Oh, I need to give it range. That's why. So we'll take Aftertouch up to full, and then we'll go over battery check again and turn it off. So now Aftertouch is simply when you're playing a note or playing a chord. I'll turn it down just a little bit. So, and then you just push harder. In this case, it's doing the same thing as a modulation wheel. So, which is fine. Aftertouch on other keyboards do different things. For example, if you use this for MIDI out and you hook it to one of my analog synthesizers, Aftertouch typically does more of a filter opening or volume control. Keep in mind there are no filters in this thing. It does not do filtering. There's no low pass, no high pass filter, none of that. So no pitch, no envelopes for filters or anything else. Now, what I have seen done is I've seen people take this, then hook it to external devices, such as like the XR18 or such like that, or dupe for the Eurorack stuff, or even other synthesizers that give you the ability to just input that and output it, and then use the filtering on that to play around with this a little bit. Which I might actually do that. And of course, it's going to the XR18, so I could use my iPad. I could lay my iPad right here and then play the internal filters on it, and it will actually work. I've played with that. But the whole idea is that this thing, except for adding chorus, I just think it really needs a good chorus added into it. But beyond that, I love the way this sounds. That E-Piano sound, like I said, is probably my favorite. It's so 1980s, but if you're trying to do that style sound, this is a beautiful keyboard for that. I was watching, who was the video from? I think it was actually ADSR, but it was one of the guys who was talking about the refaced DX instead of the original DX. Now, refaced DX, if you're familiar with the Roland Boutique series, the refaced DX is Yamaha's variation on the same concept, bringing back old synthesizers. I have not had a chance to, other than going to Sweetwater, which is about 4 hours from here, which is a ginormous music store, and playing around with one of the Boutique series. I really haven't had a chance to do it. But I find it funny though that Yamaha's reface on this cost more than the actual the DX7. You can buy these cheaper than that. However, I understand why you would want to do that. This thing weighs like a ton. It is heavy. Crazy heavy. I say it's got to be up there somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40 pounds. I'll see if I can find the actual number, and I'll see if I can put it on the bottom down here somewhere. But it is amazingly heavy. My Roland FA08 full 88 key keyboard, weighted keys on it weighs about as much as this thing, and this is 5 octaves. You know, but you know, you're not going to hurt this. I mean, honestly, this thing can take an amazing beating. There's a back to the ADSR guys. They showed a picture of one I think Trent Reznor beat up on stage. But if you look at it, the keys, which are plastic, are all beat up. But the rest of the thing is in beautiful shape. I swear you put a new keyboard on it, it would probably work. But this thing is this is all metal. That's metal. This is, you know, the membrane stuff. But there's metal underneath that. There's metal here, there. The sides are a little bit of plastic, but and this thing's a tank. But for that, this is a sound created in 1983. And it still is just beautiful. I mean, it's, you know, it's just a gorgeous sound. Back to the reason I bought this. One was that this is a keyboard that, as a kid, I just absolutely wanted to have. And I found it at what I consider to be an amazing price. Delivered for $157. I mean, and this thing came from California. So, I mean, it is in amazingly good shape. I can tell you that at least at some point, someone who was blind played this thing, because they did actually put some braille on this thing. And there were some stickers, I think, that were on this thing at one point. But it's an amazing shape. I mean, honestly, this thing was sold as 4 parts, and it needed a battery and reloaded. And I'm loving playing with this thing. It is really just that phenomenally sounding. It really, really is. So, needless to say, I mean, you do take a risk buying a used piece of equipment. You know, always for a few reasons. One, it may be completely trashed. One of the worst reasons I've seen that I really cannot emphasize, if you're buying something online, like through eBay and such like that, it's great if they have a lot of photos. Look specifically at areas that are like in between the key bed and the actual metal or the back piece of this. Look around this thing, see in the corners and stuff like that. And beyond the fact looking for cracks and dings and dents, all this kind of stuff, look for bug debris. Sadly to say, there's a lot of really disgusting things out there, and what happens to some of this equipment is really sad. Now, this one, of course, came in and was in beautiful shape. All I did was dust it. That was about it. And inside this thing, it was immaculate. I wasn't even a cobweb inside this thing. And no bug debris or anything like that, which is great, because the last thing you want is something like roaches or even worse, bed bugs. You know, I always worry about that. I never open these things in my house. When they come in, I take them to an area that is cleanable easily and open them there. But like I said, this thing came in. It was packed in a lot of peanuts. And I think I spent an hour getting all the little styrofoam peanuts out of this thing. But other than that, this thing's in amazing condition. It looks beautiful. It sounds awesome. Every part of it works. I couldn't ask for a better keyboard, especially one from 1983. I just can't state that enough. This thing is from 1983. You know, it is like 35 years old, 30, almost 35 years old. So yeah, I mean, when this video, technically, I guess it's 34 right now, but I'm only like 4 days away from the new year. So yeah, it is amazing. I absolutely love playing this thing. I don't like moving it. Like I said, it is heavy. You know, it is not a light keyboard. especially compared to like any of the other ones I have. If you watch one of my other videos on the XWP1, I think that thing weighs about as much as my pair of headphones here. Yeah, this thing weighs as much as an engine block of a car, or at least that's what it feels like anyway. So, hope this was enjoyable to you. I'm going to try and bring you some more synthesizer stuff here coming up. I'm also going to start collaborating with some other friends on some more videos that are more tech related. I hope to release one also on redoing network racks, which I know is radically different from music. But my life, you have to understand, I don't do YouTube full time, needless to say. I'm an IT person full time. I do this because I love this stuff. This is what I really wanted to do in my life. And I've done sound professionally and that kind of stuff. And right now I play with my church's band at least once a week, if not twice. And that's, this is the area that I think I have the most love in, is sound and music and stuff like that. So y'all have a great day, have a Merry Christmas and an awesome New Year. I'll see you next time.